So everybody, thanks so much. If you're listening to us for the first time, whether it's on the podcasting sites or on one of the radio stations, please tell your friends and family. If it is on one of the podcasting or it's on YouTube, please subscribe and tell your friends. We're trying to really get that out. A lot of people listen on the internet now. It's radio's kind of had its time and day, and it's day in the sun, I guess, and it's almost over. But we appreciate you listening. Madison Habersetzer on the program here from the Young Americas Foundation. She's really trying to help a lot of young people, I think, find the right way. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But Madison, thanks so much for your time today. Greatly appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Rob. It's great to be here.
So just tell the audience a little bit about you in general before we start our conversation.
Sure. So I serve as a conference director here at Young Americas Foundation. Young Americas Foundation is the premier conservative student outreach organization in the United States. We're dedicated to ensuring that increasing numbers of young Americans hear and understand the ideas of individual freedom, free enterprise, limited government, strong national defense, and traditional American values. So I help organize our student programs nationwide. We have conferences available for students from middle school through college. We also do a lot of work actually on high school and college campuses around the country, helping students advocate for conservative ideas, making sure that they have a voice on their campuses and in their communities.
How was your upbringing? Were your parents liberal? Were they conservative? How did all that pan out?
Yeah, so I grew up in a conservative Catholic household. So both my parents are strong conservatives. I always kind of joke that I was raised on Rush Limbaugh. My mom was a committed fan of talk radio. So I've really always been conservative, but I started really making these ideas my own in college. That's where I started to really encounter pushback against what I believed, and I had to, figure out why I believed what I believe. I had to actually be able to understand and defend, the merits of free enterprise. Why do pro-life issues matter? And that's where I really started to encounter these things on my college campus. And so it was actually in college where I first got involved in conservative activism. It was actually the pro-life movement that first kind of dipped my toes into activism. But then from there, I developed a great hatred for communism and socialism, made that another really great, mission to help educate my fellow peers on the dangers of those ideologies. And then, of course, freedom of speech, all of these things. I became really passionate about defending those ideas in college. And it really was Young Americas Foundation that helped me do that. They gave me the tools, the resources to help effectively talk about these ideas on my campus, to help bring speakers to address these issues. And they also really just educated me through our conference program and various activism projects that they were able to help me implement at my school. So I really have been a lifelong conservative, but a re-energized conservative since college.
Whitworth University in Spokane, Washington. Tell the viewers a little bit about that. I assume it was a liberal school from what you're speaking about then?
Yeah, so it's a Christian liberal arts school. And like many schools in that sort of category, the conservatives think it's so liberal. The liberals think it's so conservative. I really do think it's somewhere in the middle, but there really was a lot of work to be done. And I'll be honest, I was disappointed with the school. I was under the impression that it was more conservative than it was. They ended up banning Ben Shapiro on my campus while I was a student there. I'm still not over it. I thought that was a huge loss for freedom of speech and intellectual diversity on campus. But I continue to see this problem and this pattern nationwide. It wasn't just Whitworth who was afraid to hear an effective advocate of conservative ideas. Ben Shapiro has been banned at Grand Canyon University, which is another Christian liberal arts school, and myriads of others that their names are escaping me right now. But he continues to receive pushback, cancellation, and he's not the only one. Alan West, Dr. Arthur Laffer, Michael Knowles. These are all people that school administrators in particular are afraid to host them on their campus because they're effective and they effectively deliver conservative ideas and messaging, which university administrators don't usually like.
I want to talk about what are conservative principles to you, and so you can educate some of these liberal viewers that are watching the program or listening today.
Sure. I would say freedom, of course, is the big word that we believe in. And that includes, freedom of speech, but also things like free enterprise. It is honestly shocking to me how popular communist and socialist ideologies have become in America today. And I think that that's really dangerous. And I think that it's largely ignorance on the reality of what socialism and communism does to a community, to a country, to individual people. And so I think that those are really significant parts of what we are seeking to educate young people on today at Young America's Foundation, the merits of freedom, free enterprise, the value of that. Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is only one generation away from extinction. It is not passed along through the bloodstream, and people, once they have lost freedom, never find it again. And I think that that's largely true. And so that's why our cause is so pertinent, time sensitive. It's really critical that we reach young people with these ideas of freedom today. And I think that the idea of freedom, the messaging of conservatism, really is a positive and optimistic one. It's an exciting one that young people like. Who doesn't like freedom? Freedom is good for our country. Especially that you were talking about in, the era of COVID lockdowns. Nobody likes that. There's true value in, personal responsibility, being able to make decisions for you, your family, your community. And so that's really what we're seeking to do, is to restore those ideas, that personal responsibility, that optimism, that love for freedom and America. And that's, I think, a big part of our conservative messaging.
Madison Habersetzer here on Fire Breathing Rob, Young America's Foundation. Let's keep going into this interview with these questions here. Are these principles really winning, though? Because the liberals won back the Senate, which it looked like they were going to get shellacked. Apparently, the abortion issue was a big issue. I'm still beside myself because as a person that's working class, I would think that inflation, gas prices, food prices, insurance, everything, the list goes on, would be at the top of Americans' minds with the inflation rate. It seemed like they kind of really didn't care. And it was more so against Trump that you would vote for, Democrats, abortion. Are these principles that we're speaking about today in this interview, but you are speaking about, really, prevalent in America's minds with this 2022 election, with the results?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a tough one. I'm honestly not sure what to make of these recent trends. I think that a lot of people were surprised by them.
Sure.
I honestly was. I do still think that our conservative ideas, I really do ultimately think that they are winning. And the last couple of weeks, I'm honestly not sure what to make of that, but we continue to see, young people excited about these ideas on campuses nationwide. I think that there is real promise there.
For people listening, this is Madison Habersetzer here from the Young America's Foundation. Let's talk a little bit about the foundation. How did you know that this was a foundation that was fit for you?
Yeah, so I was first invited to a Young America's Foundation conference when I was in college, and I really didn't know a whole lot about it. But my friend invited me. He said, Madison, you're going to love it. It's all these conservatives, we're going to be at this conference in Dallas, Texas. You should come. And I was immediately blown away. I knew I was among my people. Just optimistic, exciting messages about freedom, love for Ronald Reagan, who was already a personal hero of mine. That was a good endorsement in my mind, that they had that Reagan connection. Young America's Foundation actually owns and operates the Reagan Ranch as well, so deep Reagan roots. And I was just immediately, captivated by their messaging regarding free enterprise. That's always been something that was really important to me. And really, the more I learned about the dangers of communism and socialism, the more I knew that free enterprise really was the way to go. The pro-life movement has always been very close to my heart as well. Young America's Foundation has been staunchly, unapologetically pro-life every time, which was always a big winning message for me.
Well, you brought this up earlier in the conversation about freedom of speech, freedom of expression on college campuses. It seems like the liberals can bring on whatever speaker they want. They can protest about anything they want, and it's okay. the minute that a conservative brings on a speaker or protests about something, they're, automatically a racist, a misogynist, a this, a that, and the other thing. And then there's a lot of people that are afraid to even come out to like a conservative protest or conservative speaker at a college if that does happen, because they're worried about getting defamed. Or, people saying, hey, it goes back to the racist, misogynist, every word in the book that they are if they go to these speeches. How do you fight against this? Because it's happening more and more, and people are scared to go to these, speeches, these meetings, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. You are completely right about that. We see this constantly on campuses nationwide. Just in the last 5 years, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West was run off campus at the University of Buffalo earlier this year, had to have a police escort off campus. Our chairwoman of the YAF chapter there was actually chased and harassed across campus, had to hide in the bathroom from some leftist protesters who were yelling, "Get her, capture her." Just absolute insanity. Michael Knowles had bleach thrown on him at one of our lectures. Dr. Arthur Laffer had to be escorted off stage and was actually never permitted to speak because leftist students just kept shouting him down. Like there was no speech that could actually take place. That was at SUNY Binghamton in New York last year, or maybe it's 2 years ago now. But it's crazy. We see these trends all of the time. But I think that for us at Young America's Foundation, how we deal with it is, number one, we keep continuing to go. We won't be canceled. We won't be shut up. When you have these leftist tantrums, we will not be silenced. And a big part of the reason, a big way that we continue to press forward is to continue to educate and strengthen young conservative leaders on campus. We bring them to our conferences, we help inspire them with conservative ideas and messaging, but then we also equip them with the tools to actually return to their schools and make an impact. Of course, we help make an impact through our campus lecture program, but also by equipping students with the confidence to ask good questions in class, to challenge their leftist professor, not in like an obnoxious sort of way, but in a thoughtful way, to ask good questions, to be reasonable, common sense conservatives. And I think that really is a winning tactic for us. Over and over, when I was at Whitworth University, I was always the student who would, raise my hand, ask a question, push back against, whatever, my leftist professor was saying. And it was shocking to me how after class, students would always come up to me and say, "Hey, I really liked what you said. Thanks for saying that." And I'm like, really? Wow, you could back me up for once, but okay. So I think that there's a lot of value in educating students who are excited to talk about these ideas, are willing to bring another perspective to their classes, to their dormitories, to their sports teams, really a grassroots approach in that respect. And I think that that's a really important way to honestly change and influence the culture.
Now, have you been in one of these scenarios where you've been attacked verbally, physically, any matter?
I haven't been, not attacked physically, thankfully, but I mean, when I was on campus, after one lecture that I hosted with Jason Mattera, who's a New York Times bestselling author, and he talks a lot about political correctness and cancel culture, that sort of thing. I hosted him for a lecture at my school, and one student actually followed me out to the parking lot following that event and hollered at me that I had brought hatred to our campus. And I think that it's so dangerous that now, words are violence. And that's just not true. Words are words. Violence is violence. And, here we have all these students who think that, hearing a dissenting opinion, hearing an opinion that's different than yours somehow equates to violence. That is a great threat to freedom of speech and intellectual diversity. When you can't actually have a conversation, civil discourse, it must be shut down. And this is what we're seeing in the cancel culture on campuses nationwide. And I think it's a really dangerous trend.
Does this mean though civility is dead?
Is civility dead? I think it depends. I think with hardcore leftists largely, because they do want to shut you down. They want to cancel you. It's not about having a kinder, more respectful conversation. When a conservative is effective in delivering conservative ideas and messaging, they must be shut up. They must be canceled. It's not just about, civility. It's about effectiveness. And so I think that that's really what it comes down to. And even from my own experience, when I was working to bring Ben Shapiro to my campus, I had not one, but two professors sit me down and encourage me to bring someone more intellectual to campus. If you know anything about Ben Shapiro, he's a pretty smart dude, pretty well educated. And to call him not intellectual is just not accurate. But they didn't like him because he was effective. And so I think that that's really what it's about. It's much more about, who is effective rather than, who is civil. And I think that unfortunately we are seeing a breakdown of civility when, leftists encounter someone who has strong conservative principles and delivers them well.
Just interviewed a woman from the Republican Woman Federation, and it's operating all around the country. And she says that, women are really rising up, whether it's, in the schools. We saw this back in 2021 in Virginia with the Glenn Youngkin election, and how it was really about schools. And obviously COVID really brought this out too, even before that election. As a young woman yourself, what are you seeing as far as in the conservative movement with women? Are you seeing them really rise up and fight and grow in the ranks? And it's not just men anymore, it's women.
Absolutely. I think that the moms in particular are really getting fired up these days. And I think the primary driver of that is really what you alluded to with the Virginia situation. Traditional family values are majorly under attack, now where we don't even have a firm answer to what is a woman these days, that's astounding. And anyone with common sense, and this is a lot of moms, know that there has to be an answer to this. Moms with young children, boys and girls, they know what a woman is, they know what a girl is, but now in our public schools, these ideas are under attack. And I think especially with all of the transgender issues these days that are just being pushed at younger and younger ages, we're seeing transgender coloring pages in preschools across the country. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And it's just common sense. I'm not yet a mother, but I would want my kindergartner figuring out what their favorite school subject is or what sport they want to play, whether they're going to be not their, sexual orientation at the age of 5 years old. Why are we even having these discussions? And I think that this, I think it's growing to be more than just, a conservative issue. This is where it really is becoming just a common sense issue, something that, is relevant to all parents. Something that I think that, the leftists have done is create, an entire constituency of parents, people who think they have to defend, the dignity, the safety of their children in schools. I think that that's where conservative messaging really is winning, because traditional values, they make sense. They're attractive to people, and especially to young families.
Yeah, it's really crazy of what's going on in schools. And as a person that's taught in schools, that did my master's degree in education, it's pretty much a cesspool in a lot of these non-private schools, to be honest.
Totally. And that's just, where it doesn't make sense to have, your high school girls, having to encounter men in the locker room, or even, competing against biological males for collegiate athletic scholarships. That's ridiculous. Talk about, I thought we cared about feminism and women's empowerment. What happened to that? Instead, we are canceling women and just subbing in the boys. It's ridiculous. And I don't think that these sorts of ideas are winning largely across America. And so I think that especially is an important issue to women nationwide.
I voted for these liberals throughout my life. Barack Obama twice, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden. I'm just tired of it. We have, the country's in turmoil. There's inflation up the kazoo. The trans stuff that's being forced. I feel sorry for these young kids, that are being pushed on this woke ideology. Thankfully, we do have a governor in Florida that's standing up against this, standing against the COVID lockdowns, against the COVID mandates on the vaccines. I personally had a vaccine injury. Again, we have to say this on YouTube specifically. We're for vaccines. They're safe and effective. Okay, so we said that for that. We're not against that. But just to go back to the point, I've just had it. I cannot keep voting for these people that just keep pushing this crap, this silliness. And it's just disgusting after a while. Again, I'm not as Republican or conservative, I should probably say is a better terminology, than you are. But I do believe, especially, because he is our governor, my governor, DeSantis, on the woke ideology and also on the COVID lockdowns and the mandates. And I think he was 100% correct on those issues. What would you say, again, to people like me that, do still have some liberal ideology left? We're fighting. It's like that girlfriend, I say. You had the girlfriend, you loved her, she cheated on you. Now you got the new girlfriend, you love her, but you still think about the old one and, what could have been. So that's my mind right now as far as the person that's, into politics. So what would you tell someone like me that, does still have some of those liberal tendencies, but is moving more towards the center and a little bit towards the right?
Yeah, I think I would actually go to the old Ronald Reagan. When he was running for re-election in 1984, he once famously said during his debate with, I believe it was Walter Mondale, he just asked the audience, ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Yeah. And I think that is so relevant right now. Maybe you saw those memes floating around social media that said, go fill up your gas tank, go grocery shopping, check your 401k, and then decide who you're going to vote for. And I think that question really is, it's kind of a good litmus test, when we're looking at all of these policies that I certainly do not feel better off now than I did 4 years ago. All of these things that we've gone through COVID, and for what, we're finding that, it was just such a huge infringement on freedom, and that it perhaps was not as, serious a threat, at least to young people, as it was initially thought. All of these things, you look at insane inflation, what's going on internationally in terms of foreign policy. How does America stand now? We're in a bit of an interesting spot with both Russia and China, and that did not seem like the case 4 years ago. And so I think that thinking about all of these ideas really are important, and would perhaps help just people who think critically to really identify where they stand today.
So again, Madison, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time today. Can you tell the people that are listening, and we hope they will, connect with you if they have questions, or connect with YAF if they have questions. If they do want to join the organization, how can they get in contact with them? And also if they want to follow you or get in contact with you on social media, how can they do that also? Absolutely. So the best way to get in contact with us is to check out our website. That's yaf.org. We'd love to, it has all kinds of information about who we are, our mission, our programs, opportunities. I would also encourage our listeners to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or even on TikTok. So check us out there. That's YAF. All right. So again, Madison, thanks so much for your time. Greatly appreciate you coming on, and hope to have you on again sometime soon. Thanks so much, Rob.